Families hugged, kissed and cheered, singing the song of Auld Lang Syne to bring in the new year. The beginning of the new Roaring Twenties had begun, a buzz in the air for new beginnings as 2020 was welcomed across our homes. Whisky glasses clinked, parties continuing on into the wee hours of the morning, thoughts of rolls and square and tatty scone on the mind. There was talk of a virus, identified in the sprawling capital of Wuhan in the Hubei province in China, deadly and also dangerous. But that was miles away. 2020 was going to be a year like any other. Back to work, back to the gym, back to failed New Year's resolutions, and back to normality. Little did anyone know what was yet to come. With talks of a lockdown looming in the middle of March, something had to be done. Spireview, Copperworks and Block Earn Housing Associations, along with Royston Youth Action, Rosemount Development Trust, Help for the Homeless, the Hub in the Hill Cafe, Rosemount Lifelong Learning, North Glasgow Community Food Initiative, North Glasgow Healthy Living Communities and Councillor Alan Casey got together to formulate a plan of action. This was the beginning of the Royston COVID Response Group. The partners got to work and Spireview Housing Association quickly prepared a funding bid for submission to the National Lottery, the end result of which was funding of £63,040 to allow the delivery of food parcels and hot meals across our local community for a period of 16 weeks.
Well, really going back to the very start of the COVID lockdown, we were in quite a fortunate position that we had a funding stream in place with the lottery. So they actually approached us and asked us if we needed any financial help with COVID, and off the back of that they gave us an uplift on our grant. But that was done in full support with the full Royston Coronavirus Response Group. We couldn't have done it without them. That's the bottom line. We needed people to be coming forward and volunteering. Our two first volunteers as such were our tenancy support officer, Geraldine Burgess, and one of her colleagues at the Simon community, Tracy Blair. They volunteered to coordinate that frontline response, and they also recruited a number of other volunteers as well. And also at the same time we had people coming through the door saying to us, we want to help our community. Some local people had been furloughed and some people from further afield as well, but we just couldn't have done it without them.
North Glasgow Community Food Initiative contributed to the food parcel effort and through offering support to the people in Royston learned that there was a real need for a food pantry. Royston Community Pantry has now been open for just over a year. It costs £3 to join and members get £20 worth of shopping for just £3. Since restrictions have lifted, they also offer a 3-course community meal for free at Royston Hill Community Hub every Monday from 11:45am to 1pm.
So, because we were providing emergency food parcels and food from this shop unit in the Royston Hill Community Hub, we wanted to really make sure that dignity was at the heart of what we were doing. So the pantries developed from the idea that people really need choice, need a variety of food, should be able to choose food that's culturally appropriate and appropriate for any dietary needs and just taste as well. So the pantry's been really successful in the fact that people can come into the shop and have a good shopping experience and choose what foods that they want to buy.
A hub of activity took place at Royston Hill Community Hub, which was kept open throughout the COVID outbreak. Preparation and delivery of food parcels was coordinated by the Housing Association's Tenancy Support Officer, Geraldine Burgess, supported by her colleague, Tracy Blair, and estate caretaker, David Manners, along with an incredible group of volunteers.
Brilliant. Everyone was great. It was Gillian at the housing office. She was the one that put it out on Facebook, social media, to get as many volunteers as possible, especially because a lot of the local community, they were furloughed or they had their hours cut, so they wanted to give something back to the local community. So we had a lot of volunteers wanting to do that. We even got a family from Paisley who came up, and they were giving out hot meals and food parcels as well, because they just wanted to help.
Hot meals were prepared by the Hub on the Hill Cafe chef Pauline Fratty and her assistant Elaine McCargo. Pauline had only just launched her new business venture within Royston Hill Community Hub a few weeks before lockdown.
Well, it was hard. It was a big decision for me to make, to go ahead, and then we get 3 weeks, and then that was it, lockdown. It didn't really have time to think. Everything just happened so fast. Spireview, we were lucky enough with them. They get government funding, lottery funding. Royston Youth Action get funding for the kids as well. As a community, we all came together, and we were able to start with community meals for people that were isolating and all that sort of thing. Then we could go a wee bit wider. And we started getting the clubs in here, the Young at Heart, we get them fed every other day. So I didn't really have time to think about my wee cafe at that point. So. Personally, I didn't realise I'm from this area, and I didn't realise how close we actually all were. And if that stuck with me, that through all this carry on and people with nothing and people with no food, and as a community we rallied together, and that's kind of stuck with me ever since. That it's very community spirited.
One such group that received help was the Young at Heart Club. Held at Royston Hill Community Hub every Thursday, it began to try and tackle social isolation within vulnerable groups and is open to anyone over the age of 50. Everyone was aware of how the members would be affected by such an isolating lockdown. They were delivered hot meals every week during the 1st and 2nd.
I think it was well. I think we done well, and I think the housing, Spireview, I take my hat off to them. I think they done really well, plus the people that had working for them. I mean, it was volunteers and different things that came forward. These people put their life in risk, because we're champing the door and saying, hey, it's still put their life in risk coming out and doing it for us. And behalf of the Royston, I want to thank everybody that done that for us, because it made us feel wanted, if for nothing else. But no, I think he's done well, and I appreciate what the Spireview done. And Pauline with the food as well, I think it was good. And you were getting your food hot, so that made a bonus as well. No, I was pleased with that.
Royston Youth Action were incredibly busy preparing and distributing over 180 activity packs to local children and the elderly and vulnerable residents every week. Activities were halted between their music room, art projects, comfy room and main hall. No one was allowed in, but they continued to support their local community through Zoom and online activities. Royston Youth Action also opened a Take What You Need room that still continues to operate to this day.
We didn't have it before lockdown. We always kind of gave out period products and some toiletries and things, but during lockdown there was a lot of families asking us for toys, books, clothes. They couldn't access the shops. Obviously children were growing out of things, so we started collecting in lots of items and even more toiletries, and we cleared out the old computer room, shuffled all the rooms about and made a Take What You Need room, and families at that time could sort of book one at a time to come down. Now it's just open for anybody and everybody to use. The kids go in and have a look through stuff and take things away. There's no stigma, and they can just take a bag, fill it up, take what they need basically. Oh, definitely so important. Everybody worked so well together. All the local organisations, housing associations, volunteer groups, everybody came together and made sure that basically the whole community was supported, whether it was with food, care packages, phone calls, checking round, delivering things, hot meals from the cafe. Everybody worked really well together. There was no duplication. I know a lot of other areas had, maybe 2 or 3 groups in, and some people were getting duplications of things and missing out maybe on something else. So we worked together to ensure that basically all areas of care were covered, and hopefully anybody that needed help knew that they could come to us and we helped them.
Rosemount Development Trust secured over £20,000 of Scottish Government funding to support Royston Youth Action in other areas of work, providing emergency support to local children and families in the form of mobile top-ups, food vouchers and wellbeing and care packs. Rosemount Development Trust were also able to assist Rosemount Lifelong Learning with funds for family activities.
It strengthened the partnerships. It did bring everybody together and strengthened the partnerships. In Rosemount, we continue to have a community benefit fund that that we deliver into the local community. So basically, we run the workspace, and the monies that we generate in the workspace are reinvested back into the local community. And as part of that, we set aside so many funds each year to reinvest in local organisations. So we've supported a number of organisations over the past 10 years. In fact, I actually just did a wee history of the funding that we've reinvested into the local community over the past 10 years, and it's 1.24 million, which is excellent for a wee small community project that started up 31 years ago.
Rosemount Lifelong Learning were vital in getting people online by distributing devices and teaching them how to use programmes like Zoom so they could continue to deliver their regular services to the local community.
We'd done, questionnaires and things like that, and people were really positive about it. In fact, some of them were overwhelmed with the support. We were giving them activities to do, maybe giving them maps to take their kids away for the day and giving them the resources to do that. And when you've done it, some of them maybe don't move out the area, and we're saying, why don't you go here in Glasgow, giving them maps. So they really appreciated that. And I think that personal touch, just making sure that people were okay, was greatly received.
North Glasgow Healthy Living Community secured funds from Glasgow City Council's Area Partnership to provide people with a Saturday night fakeaway, which included ingredients and a recipe card for a healthy meal, along with fun and engaging activities for recipients.
Impact was, I would say there was an obvious sense of greater engagement, because our packs were collected at 3 different points in Royston, and that was up at Royston Hill Hub, it was down at the Milburn Centre, and it was down at our office in Charles Street. And we saw that people were coming out. There was a bit of community spirit, because we had referrals from all 4 housing associations, and we also had self-referrals. But people got to know that people in the queue were able to pick a pack up for someone that wasn't there. So we definitely saw a greater sense of engagement. We saw, as the weeks went on, there was an increased sense of isolation, loneliness, and in the packs we had something to do with supporting mental health and wellbeing every week. So not only did you get food and the recipe to make it, and eventually there was a recipe book that went with the packs, where children were allowed to pick a toy every week, adults were allowed to pick something kind of was good for their spirit, whether it was a box of chocolates, or whether it was a mental health and wellbeing magazine, or it could be a pair of sports socks, some deodorant. So there was just something that was saying life will be normal again, and here's something that maybe people couldn't have afforded at the time.
Royston Hill Community Hub had a host of fantastic volunteers working there throughout the COVID pandemic. They kept the food parcel and hot meal lists up to date, answered phones, prepared and delivered parcels, as well as prepared and delivered hot food to the most vulnerable people in the community. Some even helped collect supplies from various supermarkets and suppliers.
Yeah, it was really warm, to be honest with you. And then it was still trying to keep that wee bit of distance from them, because sometimes you had all these bags, you had a time limit, then people would want to stop and talk to you. Once that trust was built up, then they would invite you in, but you couldn't go in because obviously it was social distancing. So at first I remember wearing the visor for the first time and the mask, and you just felt like such an alien. But then you just get used to it, you know, you just get used to wearing the mask. But what was also good was if a resident wasn't at home and they were expected to be at home, it was good as a check-in service, so I could then come back and say to the housing officer here, such and such didn't open the door, or I couldn't get in, or sometimes maybe one or two cases was a wee bit more serious than that, but at least it was a reporting mechanism. Not that you were asked to do that wasn't part of it, but that kind of fell into place.
Definitely go and do it. They might not have the confidence to do it, but they will get the confidence to do it, because I never had the confidence to do it 8 years back, and now I'm doing it now. So they'll get there. So I would say I definitely come and volunteer.
Royston truly came together as a strong and caring community during the COVID pandemic. Special thanks must go to those volunteers who truly went above and beyond to look after their local community. The COVID-19 pandemic came with devastating effects. Between losing loved ones and dwindling mental and physical health, there wasn't anyone that wasn't affected. However, the Royston COVID Response Group and those volunteers that gave up their time were truly the lighthouse calling out in a dark and stormy sea. From everyone in Royston, thank you.